Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack. Welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about application development, deployment, and management at scale. GitLab is a single application for the entire software development lifecycle. From project planning and source code management to CI/CD, monitoring, and security, GitLab helps enterprises deliver software to market at new speeds. Hey, it's Alex Williams, the New Stack, here for another episode of the New Stack Makers, and today we're at GitLab Commit. And GitLab Commit is GitLab's first user conference, taking place in Williamsburg, Brooklyn at the Williamsburg Hotel. And fitting, my first guest is Sijbrandij, CEO and co-founder at GitLab. Hi, Sid.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
You are welcome, and there's been some announcements today, and I'd like to just talk about those briefly. We don't have all the news yet, but we know that you have received a considerable amount of funding, $268 million as I understand.
Correct.
Valuing the company at $2.75 billion. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What does a company now do when it gets that kind of funding? What is that next step for GitLab?
Yeah, we're going to continue what we were doing, and this money will enable us to keep hiring people and keep hiring people to make GitLab more mature in every single aspect. GitLab is incredibly broad. We started with version control and CI, but now we go all the way from planning what you want to do to monitoring the results of that. I want to make sure every part of GitLab becomes as good as the best parts.
So that company is built on these values that you've developed, really these values that focus on really collaboration. How did you come about? How did you develop this philosophy? Is this something you brought from another company prior to GitLab, or was it just the technology itself that seemed to really require that level of collaboration and openness and transparency that GitLab really focuses on?
Yeah, it's like every value has different origins. Not everything came from me, luckily. It was a collaborative effort. And at a certain point, we had 13 different values, and nobody could remember them anymore, so we had to cull them down. So we started kind of seeing whether we could group them. So a lot of the values came from stuff I saw during my life. I worked at companies like IBM and Procter & Gamble. I worked at small startups, I worked at big companies, I even was a part-time civil servant at a certain point. So I saw a lot of things that worked really well and things that I always thought could be done better. And building a company from scratch is a great way to try to do something, try to improve on that.
How'd you get started with it? What were some of the first things that you did?
I think one of the first values was transparency, because we knew there was an existing community around GitLab, and we didn't want the wider community to get alienated because this company was getting a bigger and bigger, being more and more influential inside the community. And we thought that one way to deal with that is to be transparent about what our goals were, how we operated. Because if you know more about the person, you're more likely to like them. Hopefully, if you know more about the company, you're more understanding, but it's also easier to kind of change the things that you think the company is doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. And so, what are some examples of that now? So you started with those philosophies. How do you see it today, and what are some of your reflections about where you've come from?
Yeah, it's great to see kind of feedback on, like, when we have a new policy, we get feedback not just from the people working at GitLab, but also from the wider community. And whether that's like a diversity and inclusion policy, or whether that's a company strategy of breadth over that. Like people take note and people kind of say, hey, you have this strategy, but maybe you should change it a bit, or maybe you should do X, Y, Z. And it's great to see that.
Yeah. So when you think about, such things as kindness, which are terms that maybe 5 or 10 years ago you didn't really hear much in the context of a corporation, right? What does it mean to you now? What does that mean kind of in, when you're thinking about kindness? And like, I'm thinking too about, it doesn't always work out with everyone in a company. It's just, that's just a natural thing, right? You're never going to have 100% success with every, retaining every employee, or maybe they just don't work out. Like, so how do you think of kindness kind of when you're thinking about the organization and its ebbs and flows, and like the people who work really well, but maybe others who don't?
Yeah. So I think there's a false dichotomy between kind of results and kindness. Our number one value is results. So we identify underperformance early and we act on it. And that means that your manager will tell you if something is not going right. And the ultimate consequence of that could be that we no longer want you at the company and we suggest you go somewhere else, or we let you go. I don't think that's related to kindness. I think if someone isn't working out, if it's not a good fit with the company, then the best thing for them is to move on. So it's not kind to tolerate underperformance. It's kind of unkind to both that person, who will probably be more happy somewhere else, but also to all the other team members. So kindness is not about that. Kindness is about when you identify something that is wrong, figure out the kindest possible way to make that clear to someone. The opposite of kindness is not performance. The opposite is, I think, cruelty. So if you're upset about something, what you kind of sometimes, if you're angry, the instinct is to kind of berate someone in front of everyone. And that's what we don't want to do. We want to do it in the smallest possible setting, in the kindest possible way, in a clear way. Like if you give feedback, you should be very clear, but that doesn't mean you want to step on someone's heart.
Right.
And so I think of them as, like performance and kindness as things that can coexist. And not in the last part, I read it as a reminder to myself. I sometimes, I'm quick to jump to judgment and I'm quick to criticize others. And it's always good to step back. I'm like, okay, is this needed? What data do I have? Is this needed now? In what way should I tell it? In what way is the person ready to receive the feedback?
Right. So it's being aware of yourself in many ways. So when you have a code of conduct, it's inspired by the contributor covenant. Can you tell us a bit more what inspired you to create the code of conduct and how that has helped GitLab to build a more diverse community, and how it helps retain developers, and what has been some of the outcomes of it?
Yeah, so I think the code of conduct happened, I was involved in the process, but I wasn't the lead in that process. And I think what we want is a community where everyone is welcome. So people contributing to GitLab are all welcome, and that we always criticize each other's ideas and not the person. Since at an open source project, you're not an employee, you're not a team member of a company. It should be only about the code. You're not coming there for feedback about you as a person. And I think so far as I can see, it's been a very welcoming community. I don't think it's because of the code of conduct. I think it's for lots of reasons. And it's been great to see the community getting more active over the last half year. We've seen the number of improvements made in GitLab every month by the wider community increase from 100 to now 200 a month. And we hope to continue that and be a safe and welcoming place for people contributing.
So How do you think that's really played a role in the company getting to the place where it is now, where it has 100,000 customers, and and you do cover so much, where you are a developer platform, really for your developer platform that really has a kind of that single kind of focus, but it encompasses so much. How has this played a part in that, in that success?
I think it's really important. We want to make a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle. So we're replacing tens and tens of tools at customers. And people need certain features, so they don't want to give up on certain features. So GitLab needs to do everything, and you can't do that with just a company. You need your users to kind of identify, hey, I need this, it's not in GitLab. And some of them will say, okay, I'm going to contribute it. So that constant flow of improvements is essential if we're going to kind of replace a bunch of other tools. No one wants to go back. We need to be a superset of everything else. And it would be impossible for the company kind of to identify all the different needs and make that. We need our users and our customers to contribute back.
You also have a Heroes program at GitLab, and can you tell us a bit more about that? What is the Heroes program? You mentioned it in the keynote this morning, and then actually one of your keynotes was a woman who's one of your heroes. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the concept of the heroes, and how does a customer become a hero?
Yeah, so the Heroes program is to identify who's important in the community, and that's in two ways. It's for us to focus our attention as a company on those people to help them, but also for people new to the community to identify who's important. And what heroes get is they get access to events like today. We'll pay for flights if they want to do something. We'll send them special swag so they're recognizable. But most importantly, we'll make our teams available to them. So not only our community relations team, but also our product management and engineering team members. We can't do that for everyone, so it's important to identify who's really contributing to the community. So if you're adding a lot of code, if you're making a lot of improvements in documentation, or like today, if you're giving presentations about GitLab, you're welcome to the Hero program. We might identify you proactively, or you're welcome to apply. And then by giving people that title, it opens up doors inside the company where people are told to kind of make time available for them.
So the Hero program is pretty new.
Yes, it's very new.
And what inspired it? You wanted to, again, provide a way to recognize people, and what is the value then in that in itself?
Yeah, we want to enable people. These people are passionate about GitLab, and as the company gets bigger, for a person in the company, the distance to the outside of the company is getting further and further. So if you're in a 10-person company, you interact with people outside the company a lot. If you're in a 1,000-people company, which will be in a couple of months, it seems very far away. You make only a very small percentage of your time, and your energy is focused on that. We want to broaden that up. We want to make more time and energy available to focus on that. But we cannot do that for everyone. We got millions of users. So it is hey, these are the people you should spend that time and energy on.
I want to get to that last point you mentioned, and perhaps that could be how we conclude the interview. You have hundreds of employees. You're going to be 1,000 in a few months. How do you manage that? They all work from, I know they all work from their homes or wherever they may be. Does that make it harder to run a company? Does it make it easier to run a company? I'm sure it's kind of both. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, the paradoxes of running a company where everyone works at home, and and what it offers, and what are some of the challenges it brings to.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to run a company like this. I think because we're all remote, we've been forced to adopt a lot of best practices early on. We've been really good at like writing down what is your job, what are the success metrics, what are the things you have to do to onboard, what are the metrics you care about. It's also a lot, it scales a lot better. If you're all co-located and you're on the same floor, that works really well. If you're on multiple floors in the same building, that starts to deteriorate a bit. If you're on multiple buildings in the same city, that gets worse. And then if you're in multiple cities, it's harder, and if you're in multiple countries, it starts to break down.
But that's how most companies work.
That's how most companies work, and that's why companies are really hard to scale. And there's lots of reasons, but it's one of the reasons. And I think because we never scaled by doing that. We always scaled by writing things down and recording things. Those tactics are your go-to tactics as you scale. So I think we've been forced to do that from the beginning. And I think as we grow bigger, it's starting to pay off. Not that we won't have our scaling challenges. I'm already seeing some things happening, but I think we're scaling a lot better than most companies.
How is it important for the employees to participate in this documenting and recording of the business?
It's essential. So at GitLab, we have a thing that's a rule that says handbook first. If you're going to communicate a change to people, a change in process, first put it in our handbook, and then communicate that change to people. And by now, our handbook has grown to over 3,000 pages. Like, it's impossible to read all of it. But you're going to read the sections that are relevant to the job that you have to do. It's also, we've encouraged people to kind of record things and share things. So we're trying to continuously to move conversations out of Slack and into issues where everyone can see them. We encourage people to kind of stream to YouTube. So at GitLab Unfiltered, you'll find more and more videos from the company. And everyone participates in that. It's not just the leadership, but most videos on there are from individual contributors.
So the YouTube Unfiltered, you have a YouTube channel, don't you?
Yeah, we have 2 YouTube channels. So we got a GitLab channel with our kind of official content. Because people were complaining we were uploading so much, they were getting bothered. So we got our main channel, but then we have a channel called GitLab Unfiltered. And right now the biggest problem in the company is that too many people are trying to live stream at the same time to the channel. So we're now going to have multiple channels because you can have only one live stream going on at the same time. So we're continually kind of pushing the boundaries of sharing. And a lot of people joined the company because they saw one of those recordings and they said, look, it's a mundane meeting at a company, but this is how I want to work. So I'm going to work at that company.
How do things like live streaming and, get in unfiltered videos help you change perspective about the products you offer?
I think, first of all, it makes you really humble in a video, knowing it is live streamed. You're going to be a better version of yourself. Hopefully you're not going to mince words. We're really critical of ourselves, and we're also on the record about that. And the nice thing about live streaming is it can be watched multiple times. So we have many meetings that are just 3 people, and then you look at the view count and it's 40 people, it's 80 people, it's 120 people. Madden and I had a conversation about dogfooding our own product. We embedded it in the handbook, and it really helped the company change its perspective. And instead of me having to repeat it 100 times, the video spoke for itself. I had a conversation with our chief revenue officer, and it kind of went viral on YouTube to the point that his neighbor, a firefighter, was like, yeah, I heard you pitch that product. It was great. He's like, how did you know that? Well, guess what? It was under his Gmail. Google gave an auto recommendation or something like that for that YouTube video. So there's very few companies where you get a peek inside. And if you allow for that, it's very interesting. And every week there's over 3,000 people applying for a role at GitLab. And I think being very open has been one of the great enablers of that.
So when you're out working with customers, are you starting to use live streaming?
Not commonly, because we don't want to do it in a way that makes a customer or a partner feels uncomfortable. So a lot of these meetings are internal meetings. Mm-hmm. But if a customer is up for it, for sure.
Interesting. I guess it'll go beyond, go from there. Like you must be learning all kinds of things about live streaming in the process.
Yeah, kind of. The hardest part has been getting people to start the live stream at the exact moment and not leaving a minute of static at the beginning. I think that's bad for viewership.
Yeah.
But we're also getting some super encouraging and critical responses about things we said. So it's kind of YouTube comments. I tend to not go there with other videos, but the GitLab videos, they tend to be really good.
You know, there's some interesting analysis you can do on all that video too over time. I expect, you know, to help learn what, you know, almost train that video to understand, you know, what you're getting out of it to some respect. It must have engineers scratching their heads quite a bit and wondering what they can do with this.
I think we should get a lot better at doing takeouts of the video, pointing people to the interesting parts, and having transcripts of the video below them, even if they're generated automatically. So I think there's a lot of value to be uncovered. Over time, as we grow, we're going to get better at doing that.
Do you use Otter, the transcription service?
We don't use that. We do use Chorus in our sales calls.
Okay.
And that's been amazing to transcribe those calls.
Great. Well, thanks, Sid. Appreciate your time. It's good to talk to you as always. Congratulations on the success of GitLab, and I know you guys are very self-critical, so I don't want to tell you that this is it, but it seems like you're going in the right direction.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
GitLab is a single application for the entire software development lifecycle. From project planning and source code management to CI/CD monitoring and security, GitLab helps enterprises deliver software to market at new speeds. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.